Is it just me, or has it been really tough to keep up with all the games this season? We had a ton of great matchups on Saturday. Even Friday we had a couple of great games. Like the 3:30 Eastern time games on Saturday, there were 5 games that I really wanted to watch. I mean, really, not just kind of wanted to watch, like 5 games I really wanted to watch. So it's a lot of going back and watching key plays and highlights and all that. But we try to give you the best top 25 possible. Again, I didn't see every play from every game. I don't think anyone did. But we are now to that point where we're starting to learn. We're starting to know about these teams. There are some teams that I feel like we know what they are. And then there are still some teams that we're trying to figure out because they just haven't played enough games. Like, look at Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't played anyone decent. So we really don't know how good Ohio State is. But we've seen enough to know that they're at least a very good team. Are they an elite team? Are they the best team in the country? We don't know that yet, but we'll learn more here as we continue to go through the season. And I think a big reason why it's stressful trying to keep up with all these games is because you kind of remember the end of the previous season where not every game mattered. You know, you had so many games that teams are out of the playoff race, out of their conference races, and just not as many games mattered. Well, with the 12-team playoff, there's going to be a lot more games that matter when we get to November this year. So it's going to be a fun season, but yeah, it's a little bit stressful sometimes trying to keep up with everything. So let's start at the bottom here. Number 25, Texas A&M. They're on the edge here, kind of back and forth on whether or not I should rank them. They only beat Bowling Green 26-20. But Penn State also struggled with Bowling Green, so that's a pretty good football team. And you look at the way they played against Notre Dame, that was a close one. And the way that they obliterated Florida, and now Florida showed they're not terrible. They were able to take care of Mississippi State. I know Mississippi State's pretty bad, but you start to kind of look at all the different games, all the different data points, and figure this stuff out. But yeah, I think Texas A&M is a good team. Arkansas is going to be a fun one coming up on Saturday for them. Nebraska, tough loss to Illinois, but they had a chance to win that game. I didn't feel like they were significantly worse than Illinois. I felt like those teams are pretty even. You're going to see Illinois in my rankings in just a minute. But yeah, I still got Nebraska as a solid team. What they did to Colorado still impresses me. Indiana beat Charlotte 52-14. They're 4-0. Remember, they blew out UCLA. So far, so good for the Hoosiers. Oklahoma State with a tough loss to Utah, 22-19. Like the way that they battled back in that game. But Utah looks really good. And I said this on the Takeaways video. The Big 12 is going to run through Utah. Oklahoma State still, I think, is a top 25 team. But definitely having my doubts. When you look at the way they played against Arkansas, again, I had to give them credit for what they did in that game. And again, coming back against Utah, they've got to get off to better starts throughout the rest of the season. Missouri at number 21, they're 4-0, but look, they beat Vanderbilt 30-27. It was an overtime game. They didn't beat Boston College by a whole lot. I think this Missouri team has shown that they're not an elite team. Now, they're still a playoff contender just because of the way their schedule sets up, and they could get to 10-2. But they're not an elite team. They're not one of the best, 10 teams in the country. They're not a top 10 team. I've got a number 21 right now. Again, we'll see when we get more games against quality opponents. But so far, it hasn't looked great for Missouri, and they've been a bit of a disappointment. But you're 4-0, so everything's still right there in front of you for if you're the Missouri Tigers. All right, next let's go to 16 through 20. I've got Iowa at number 20. I don't even normally look at the AP poll, but I just happened to look to see I looked at theirs after I did my top 25. So again, I definitely not going to look at the rankings before I make mine because I don't want anything swaying any of my opinions. But I noticed that Iowa was not even ranked. Look, they beat Minnesota 31-14. It's very weird with Iowa because they played one half of good football in every game, and they played one bad half of football every game. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this. I mean, look at Troy, struggled in the first half, then dominated the second half. Same thing against Minnesota. Iowa State was the opposite. They looked good in the first half, struggled in the second half. So I don't know what's going on with Iowa, but if you can get that team that plays the good half of football, Iowa's a really good football team. I've got a number 20 because I'm really high on Iowa State. Look at what they just did to Arkansas State, 52-7. You can make an argument that Iowa State should be ranked ahead of Michigan because they beat Arkansas State a lot easier. I did not do that. I do have Michigan ranked higher, but Again, you can make arguments when you look at individual games like that. You have to look at the big picture, though. You have to look at everything. I'm not saying for sure that Michigan's a better team than Iowa State, but I know the talent on the roster. I know the defense that they have. So, and I know that win over USC was a big one. So right now, that's kind of where I'm looking at it. And again, those are the things that we'll kind of figure out as the season goes along. Illinois, number 18, they beat Nebraska again. Great game. This Illinois team looks to be for real. Got to give them a lot of credit. BYU beating Kansas State 38-9. That was just the wave that they had there going into halftime and into the second half. That was a crazy game. BYU just took that one over, wound up winning again big. And then Notre Dame, a little bit of a slow start, but they take care of Miami of Ohio 28-3. And I think we've seen enough to where we know that the game against Northern Illinois was a fluke. That was not what the real Notre Dame team is. They just had a bad game, and sometimes you have that. So I'm not going to judge them too much on that game, but it's enough to not put them in the top 15. Again, they've looked good in their other games, but yeah, Notre Dame, boy, that one is going to hurt. If they lose another game this year and you have the loss in Northern Illinois, I don't know that they get in the college football playoff. And so you're going to look back at that Northern Illinois game, and that is going to be a killer for the Notre Dame team and their playoff chances. Again, unless they win out, I think if they win out, they'll be fine. But if they lose a game, I don't really see Notre Dame getting in the college football playoff. All right, let's go to 11 through 15. I've said it all along. LSU and USC are very similar. That game looked like two very even teams. I've kept them side by side in the rankings, and that stays the same. You look at LSU, though, they did not look great against UCLA. They did pull away and win that one 34-17. USC, again, I think they're a better team than Michigan, but Michigan beat them, and results have to matter. And as we get into the month of October, this is going to be more and more about resume for me. Again, not right now, but we're going to get there. But still, when you have two teams that just played, they have the same record. I mean, in this scenario, and again, there are different cases. Like Northern Illinois, you're going to say, well, they only have one loss. Notre Dame has one loss. Why are they not ahead of Notre Dame? Well, again, that game looked like a fluke. I don't think this Michigan-USC game was a fluke, even though I do think USC is the better team. Michigan still made the plays to win, and their defense was really good, and they made some great plays in the run game. So, yeah, Michigan right ahead of USC and USC right ahead of LSU. To me, those three teams should be ranked side by side because they played very close games. They look very even. And then at Louisville at number 12, they take care of Georgia Tech 31-19. A solid win over a pretty good team. We'll find out more about Louisville when they play Notre Dame, but so far so good for the Cardinal. And then we've got Clemson at number 11. They beat NC State 59-35. They're 2-1. But look, that was not a close game at all. The score was, I don't even remember now, 45-3 or 45 to, I can't remember the score at halftime. This game was over at the end of the first quarter. Clemson just went out there and did basically the same thing they did to App State. Had a bunch of backups on defense playing early in this game, rotating in early. I think they were playing walk-ons in the fourth quarter. So if you did not watch this game and you're just seeing that score, you don't understand how impressive this win. And I know NC State has not looked great, but still, it looks like Clemson's got things figured out. And this is going to be a dangerous team the rest of the season. I talked about Clemson and Miami being on a collision course in the ACC. I definitely believe that to be the case. All right, now 6 through 10. Not a whole lot going on here with these teams. Oregon did not play. Utah, again, talked about their win over Oklahoma State. Very impressive with what their defense was able to do. Penn State blew out Kent State 56-0. Ohio State, a little bit of a slow start, but they took care of business against Marshall. Michigan State will be a good test for them. Not that I think Michigan State can win, but a good measuring stick. Let's put it that way. If Ohio State's a top 10 team, they should beat Michigan State fairly easily. If they struggle, if it's a close game, then I don't know that Ohio State right now is a top 10 team. So that's going to be a fun one. Alabama did not play. They had a bye week. Of course, they've got the big one coming up against Georgia on Saturday. And then we go to the top 5. No changes here. Again, not a lot of eventful things happening this weekend in the top 10. You had Ole Miss beat Georgia Southern 52-13. Georgia had a bye week. Miami, boy, that was, you watch that game back. USF had the ball with a chance to tie the game before halftime, and Miami stopped them. They missed the field goal, and the game just totally flipped from there. Really would have. It's interesting to think about what may have happened in that game if USF had scored a touchdown and tied it up at halftime. I still think Miami would have won, but I think it would have been a closer game. Tennessee, very impressive against Oklahoma. I think they won this game by more than the score indicates. They really dominated this one. And then Texas, they beat ULM 51-3 with Arch Manning at quarterback. So now you've got two quarterbacks to worry about there. And it's great to have that depth. If Quinn Ewers, if he should be back, but if he gets hurt later in the season, now Arch Manning's had some experience, and I think Texas again is in great shape. This looks like the best team in the country right now. That doesn't mean I'm going to pick them to win the national championship. In fact, we'll do updated playoff predictions later this week. But based off of what we have seen on the field so far this season, yes, I think Texas and USC and Michigan. How USC or Michigan beat USC. That makes Texas look even better. So, yeah, I think you have to put them at number 1 at this point. So, what are your thoughts on my top 25? How would you rank the teams? Let me know down in the comments below.